Hi, I'm Mimi Chan. Welcome to Culture Chat. Thanks for joining the conversation. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. This is a spoiler alert. You may want to watch the Old Guard movie on Netflix before listening to this episode. You can also read my film review to get hyped up for the viewing. It's linked here. Greg Rucka and Leandro Fernandez's The Old Guard comic has been adapted to film. As the writer of both the comic and screenplay, Greg discusses insights on the movie and the decisions behind some of the deviations from the comic. For fans of the comic, have no fear. The characters and story follow pretty closely to the original. I am fortunate that I've developed a friendship with Greg during our weekly conversations and felt comfortable asking candid questions about the adaptation. Greg shares insights about the film that prompt a discussion on how the film speaks to the crisis our country is currently in amidst the COVID-19 pandemic and the lack of accountability from our government. The Old Guard, directed by Gina Prince Bythewood, is available now on Netflix, starring an amazing cast including Charlize Theron and Chiwetel Ejiofor. For those that don't already know, Greg Rucka is a New York Times bestselling author of hundreds of comics and nearly 24 novels. I'm loving these conversations and hope you are too. If you are, please rate my podcast and share it with others. Finally, if you'd like to support with a donation to keep this podcast going, you can become a patron of the show by visiting my website or patreon.com. For comments or suggestions, email me at mimi@culturechatpodcast.com or reach out on social media at SifuMimiChan. Now, on with the show. Hello, Greg Rucka.
How you doing, Mimi?
Great since last week. And great also because I got to watch The Old Guard.
You did?
I did. Apparently, I qualify as a real journalist to Netflix.
Right? You sent the media inquiry and they said, sure.
I said, you know what? It would be great if I actually saw this before talking to Greg and then I could really have a conversation. And I was like, wait, why don't I just check if I can? And then naturally, lo and behold. Yeah, if you ask, that's when things get done.
You shall receive. Yeah,
That's right.
It's interesting to me because I know that for some people, they had no problem getting access.
Yeah.
And then, the friends and family screenings were a freaking nightmare to arrange.
Oh, really?
And they were like, oh no, you can only give it to only like 7 people. And it's like, oh, hey, dudes, calm down. But it won't matter come midnight tonight. Everybody's gonna have access.
That's right. So I was so excited to be able to watch it, and man, I almost feel bad talking to you right now because I feel like you must be really kind of exhausted from talking about the film. As much as you love it, I can only imagine that it's been hour after hour after hour of inquiry. So I feel a little guilty.
There has been a lot of talking about the movie. Yes. There has not been a lot of talking about the movie with you, however. So that does distinguish it.
You are too kind to me. So, first of all, and you're going to have to sit here and just take it. I'm just so unbelievably excited for you, and a huge congratulations. I mean, I already knew from the trailer that it was going to be a quality and just like an intense and well-written film because you wrote it. But upon watching it, of course, Oscar got to jump into my media pass. Yeah. He was privy.
I was going to say, did you know you can't come in here while I watch it?
I mean, and so he's not going to tell anyone, but we were completely enamored. We were super, super excited. And it wasn't just an action film. I think beyond that, what you and Gina brought to it was just the strength of the characters, which is something you and I have discussed so much, and how that is what drives a story. And so beyond it being a good movie, I just really feel like you were able to tell the story that you conveyed, not only in the comic, but, come to life. And so I'm just so excited for you. And I'm
delighted to hear it.
I have been reading reviews. I wrote my own little review to be, since I got the access and all, I felt like obligated. But obviously, I'm not the only one with this opinion. You must feel I guess validated is the wrong word because I think you know where you stand with your work, but it must feel really good being your first screenplay.
Wow. I so Netflix sends out an email like on average once a day. Sometimes it's been twice a day with sort of like, here's the press roundup.
Yeah.
And so I've woken up the last couple of days to, here are the reviews, and I immediately delete, right? Because I don't want to see them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just me, right? That's just me trying to negotiate how I feel about reviews and my relationship with them, and it isn't the most mature way to deal with them. I am the first to admit. But for better or worse, am in a place where I feel like, well, if I invest in a review that is a positive review, the amount of work the amount of work required to do the due diligence on the reviewer and also on then say negative reviews is such that I can't devote it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole.
So some of the reviews, and all that said, some of this stuff is getting to me anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I people text me and, oh, look, here's a review, and it is gratifying as hell. At the end of the day, and I learned this with my novels pretty early on, is that at the end of the day, a great review is wonderful and it'll make you feel good about yourself and maybe it'll sell more books. But at a certain point and this, you've experienced this, is you make the thing. And then at a certain point, it goes into the world and all you can do is be like, are you wearing clean underwear? And hopefully you'll find a safe home. Mm-hmm. Hopefully there are people out there that will embrace. So the extension of that is that Netflix reaches something like 130 million plus households around the world.
Wow.
All right. I'm pretty sure out of a theoretical 130 million people who might see the movie, I would be surprised if 30% of them couldn't stand it. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised. Right, there are going to be people who are going to see it, and it's not going to be their thing.
Yeah, yeah.
They're not. It's not going to speak to them. They're not going to like the choices that we made. They're going to be offended or just bored or whatever, and can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
All I can do is stand beside the work that we've created and say, I am proud of what we did here, and I feel that we honored the source material, and I believe in many ways improved on it.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, and that's something I definitely want to get into. I mean, my take was, obviously I'm a fan of your comics, so I know the comic, I know the story, and the immediate thing as a comic book quote unquote fan is like you're comparing, right? You're comparing the story, you're comparing the characters, and when I wrote my little review, I thought about what I could say. I could criticize action, I could talk about this, but I really feel, and this maybe is because you and I have been talking for like 11 or 12 weeks straight now. It's literally like the perfect story at a time when we need it most. I think there's strong women, there's a diverse cast, and ass kicking to greedy individuals of the world is exactly what we need right now. Like,
oh yeah, no, there's some lovely wish fulfillment.
Yes,
it's like, rich selfish pharma asshole.
Yes,
oh no,
yes.
You got an axe in your head. Too bad.
I know. I was like, Greg. And we've talked about this before. Like now that I'm reading your novels and your prose, it's I hear you speaking to me in my head, even though usually it's an audiobook. And so even watching the film, Oscar and I immediately like, oh, I wonder what pharma did to piss him off recently. And so it's so great to be able to kind of watch it exist. Right. Yeah. So let's talk
let's talk about insulin prices, maybe. I mean, doesn't take much.
Yeah, and you and I discussed this previously as well, that you do feel that at the end of the day, you wrote a better story. And I already put a disclaimer at the top of this podcast that
big
total
spoiler
spoiler alerts,
spoilers.
but there's no way I'm not going to talk to you about it, which is, the ending obviously is so different than what was laid out in the comic. One is Andy is still bleeding. What the hell? So that's the first thing. But my big takeaway, and the thing I loved, and I think that was probably a decision by both you and Gina, was Niall really becoming kind of the heroine and finding herself in her own, but also really the one to bring everyone back to what was purposeful and what was meaningful, finding that why, and I think that was a really, really powerful choice. And I actually really enjoyed that choice. So I was wondering, for you, of course, knowing the story already and then going, okay, here I am going to adapt it. Like, at what point did you realize like that was something that needed to change?
Well, I mean, if people have been listening to interviews, some of this is going to sound a little repetitious. I will say that, the first draft of the screenplay I did with Matt Grimm as sort of my producer, in quotes, at Skydance. And when we finished it, or when I finished it, and he had given me all the notes and I'd done revisions, we put it in front of Don Granger at Skydance. And Granger came back with 3 notes. And and I have dealt with a lot of Hollywood types, and in the main, most of their notes are crap. And Granger has yet to give me a note that wasn't spot dead on. And the biggest of the 3 was, and he said it, I really like it. It's really good. He says, Niall has no impact whatsoever on this plot. If you remove her, the story changes, but the plot doesn't. And I sat there and I went, bewildered. And I sort of looked at the source material and I was like, you are absolutely correct. You are absolutely 100% correct. So the big thing that happened between the first draft and the second draft was that I thought of the second draft as, this is the Niall draft. Like, the first draft had been the Andy story. And then the second draft was me going, okay, you have the Andy story. Now what is the Niall story? Really, really take a look at that and figure out how to bone it up. So, and I honestly think that in large part it was the execution of that was one of the things that Gina responded to so strongly when she was given the screenplay. And then when Gina came aboard, there was just consistent work and fine-tuning, not just Andy and Niall, but everybody else's stories throughout the work. But it was absolutely, it was malice aforethought. It was Niall has to be able to shoulder this, and we need to serve her well.
Yeah, and
Andy was never the question. It really was, can we do right for Niall? So.
Yeah, no, and that really definitely shines through. And I think that says so much about you as a writer, as a screenwriter, as a storyteller, because there are a lot of people that would not be able to have that humility in writing and maybe take that feedback and criticism, because, this was not like you adapted someone else's comic. Like, this was already your comic, so they're basically giving you notes on what's already your story. And did you find that aspect of it challenging, or was it just kind of second nature? Because I know you as a person, so I know that you would take criticism well if it is well meant and if it was constructive. But at the same time,
I'd like to think so.
At the same time, when you're in it though, and you've put so much work into those drafts, like, it's not like, oh, let me just write this and it takes 5 minutes. You put so much into it. How's that process for you?
It wasn't as difficult as some people seem to think it might have been. And maybe it's simply that I'm at an age where I am able to look at my work with some degree of objectivity. And I long ago passed the point of believing that that the work can't be improved. And I went into the process eyes very wide open. I think one of the reasons Skydance was willing to let me write the drafts was because I made it clear up front that I understood the movie was not the comic. It needed to be a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that they were adamant about were the things that I kept. Now, I had a conversation with Granger once where I said, I'm kind of surprised nobody ever came to me and said, you got to get rid of that armored car sequence. And he looked at me and he said, if that hadn't been in there, I would have wanted to know why, and I would have made you put it back. That's one of the things that we bought, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, if there was anything to recommend me, it was that I entered the process fully aware that this had to be a different animal.
Yeah.
And that was liberating. And there are certain things, for instance, in the comic book, there's the sequence in the Paris safe house on the stairs in the apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And when Charlize came on, one of the first notes was, we're going to have to change that sequence. Because in recent memory,
mm-hmm.
Charlize Theron has done a pretty intense action sequence coming down the stairs in an apartment.
Atomic Blonde, yeah.
You got it. And it was like, whoa, that's a gimme.
Mm-hmm.
And the result of that was the discovery of Goussainville, right, which is this real town 30 minutes outside of Paris that is a ghost town. It's been a ghost town since the early 1970s.
Wow. Yeah, it was a beautiful location.
Yeah. And the place is real, and they didn't shoot in Goussainville. They shot that in the same place where they shot the medieval castle flashbacks.
Okay.
It's all the same estate.
Nice.
It's about an hour outside of London. So, which gives you an idea of the magic of
magic of movies. Yes. And do you feel like maybe because your experience as a comic book collaborator, like you have to collaborate? Like I've learned about this a lot more as I've spoken to so many creators, like you and Michael, for instance, on Lazarus, like the way you collaborate. It's not I write, you draw. Period. Like there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of questioning of your decisions, and arguing may be the wrong term, but there is a lot of collaboration in terms of Michael giving you feedback and vice versa, and not feeling like, oh, you're stepping in my territory. And do you feel like that is probably something that maybe even conditioned you for the screenwriting process? I
think so. I mean, I don't want to pat myself on the back over much, but I do think that I am. I think I'm certainly a willing collaborator, if not always a good collaborator on projects. That if the people I'm working with want to engage that collaboration, I tend to respond to it very well. And I think that's something that absolutely was learned through comics. And I can think, immediately of Gotham Central, which doesn't exist if Ed Brubaker and I don't learn how to work together with Michael Lark very quickly and very adeptly, and which to this day is one of my favorite collaborations in comics ever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you get a work like 52 for DC if you don't learn how to collaborate and to collaborate well.
Exactly.
Which isn't always saying yes and. Sometimes you have to put your foot down and say no but.
Yeah.
And there were plenty of arguments to be had, in the process of this. But most of those arguments, frankly, didn't occur until really late in the stage, and they were always focused to the same end. It was never there was never an argument about there was never an argument about intent. There was always an argument about what's the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What's the best way to execute it? And I lost as many of those as I won. And in the end, it seems to have all worked out because, it is by no means a flawless motion picture, but I think it absolutely is a successful film. I think it tells its story well. It is moving. It is exciting. It is fun. It has a heart to it. And it leaves you with some questions, and they're not just plot questions. It leaves you with some stuff that if you are inclined to think about, there's a lot to unpack.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the question, of course, that whole immortality, like some people immediately will be like, of course I'd want to be immortal. I'm like, but would you want to watch everyone you know die? And then, all right, would you be alone? And, of course, Booker's, punishment have you of being alone, quote unquote, for 100 years. I mean, 100 years, you think, that's a long time, right? And yes, so I do have to ask though, what's up with Andy? Like you left us in such a state. Oscar's like, you have to ask Greg what's going on with Andy, or do we not? We cannot go there.
Look, the film has a very obvious in case of sequel break glass scene, right? I mean, and that's how I've been referring to it. It is the emergency sequel button is right there, and all they have to do is go beep, and you have your entree into another story. The question about Andy really is whether or not the immortality is the thing that matters, right?
Okay. True.
Where she is left at the end of the film, I think, asks some really cool questions about who this woman gets to be moving forward. And should we be able to do a sequel, you bet your ass we're going to interrogate the hell out of that. But one of the things that I particularly like about the movie, and I say this with the, in case of sequel break glass proviso, is that the movie doesn't need a sequel. The movie has an ending. It is a complete work. It does not say, unless there is a second story, this story doesn't have merit or value or mean anything.
Right.
It stands absolutely on its own.
Yeah.
Should there be an Old Guard 2, then I suspect an Old Guard 2 is going to be arguably contingent on making an Old Guard 3. That once you enter into a second part, you are actually saying we are talking about a collection. We're talking about a completion here, and that movement in that structure is in Act 1 and Act 2 and Act 3. But as it stands now, as you walk away from it, all right, so maybe Andy's going to die. Maybe the next day she crosses the street and is hit by a truck.
I'm going to guess no on that, but
but maybe, or maybe she gets to go for 50 years, and die of old age finally.
Right. And I liked what she said when there was that realization point by others that, she was possibly losing her mortality. And she said, it doesn't matter. We go in the same way and we come out the same way as we always did. So nothing changes. Yeah. And I think that was
nothing.
It changes nothing. Yeah. And that really resonated with me because you kind of go, okay, it's not about the immortality or the magic or the fighting or any of that. It's like who she is and what her purpose has been. It was just, I thought it was really
well, and I think thematically, right? Hold on a second. Sorry. I think thematically that is the crucial thing, right? It is an issue of, look, at the end of the day, you can strip away the whole immortality of this movie and it's still saying the same thing. And it is saying that how you live your life matters, and the decisions you make and the choices you make and the ways you choose to help people matter and they matter beyond an accounting you will ever be privileged to see. And the obvious and I suppose easy analogy for that right now is the act of wearing a mask in public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Your decision to wear a mask in public may save the life of somebody literally on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
And that may be the person who will cure cancer. I mean, to draw it really big.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
That's the ripple effect, right? Yeah.
Yeah. We don't know the value of the life. And I've talked about this as well, but, you know, if you use the good place term of moral desert, if you're trying to live your life in search of moral desert, then that's a fine reason to do good things, but it is a flawed motivation.
Mm-hmm.
That the motivation needs to be, we do the best we can and we try to help others because that is what we should do. And what the film is able to say is these people have been around long enough that it is possible to see it.
Yeah.
But that isn't the reason you do it. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. That and Andy says, and I think this is important, she says it to Booker, you do it on faith. You know, she says to Booker, have a little faith, Book. That she has come through all of this with this reaffirmation that there is a worthiness to the effort itself, that we engage in the struggle for the sake of the struggle. And I can't think of anything, frankly, more resonant in July of 2020 than that right now. We are living in a time and a place that is genuinely the worst it has ever been in modern history. I mean, it genuinely is.
Yeah.
We are looking at this makes the start of World War II look like a fucking picnic. The crises that the world is facing and the bad actors who are attempting to keep it going, who are actively fighting attempts to fix it, is staggering. We are facing a banality of evil at this moment that is incomprehensible if you really stop to think about it. Mm-hmm. And it is on every fucking level. You know, it is from foreign students we're going to kick out of the country.
I know, that's infuriating.
The only reason to do that is to kill higher education at a time when higher education is its most vulnerable. It's the only reason to do it.
Yeah, it's all right? Insidious.
That is a direct attack on the intellect of the country. It is an attack trying to make the United States dumber, because the stupider we get, the easier we are for these fucking fascists to control. Right? We are at war with Russia, but we have the GOP and the president refusing to admit it because they work for Russia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? But we are at war with Russia right now. All right? There's no question. We have a president who is actively promoting a white supremacist agenda because he wants a race war, because he wants a civil war, because that way he won't have to lose the election and he won't have to leave. Because if he leaves, he's going to get fucking raped to death when he goes to prison.
Tell me how you really feel, Greg.
So we are literally at a staggering crisis.
Yeah. No, and when you were explaining all of those things about the film, that was exactly what I was thinking was, well, and that is why it's so frustrating when something as simple as I hear people say, well, I don't believe I should have to wear a mask. That's why it's so infuriating.
Exactly.
You know,
it is inherently selfish thing to do.
It's so selfish. Yeah.
It is a staggering selfishness. It's hard for me to breathe wearing a face mask. It's like, you're the same guy who won't wear a condom because it doesn't feel good. You know, and it's like, and I got no tolerance for that. I literally have no tolerance. You know, you can't do it. It's funny. You're asking ER people to do it 24 hours a day.
Exactly.
They seem to manage it.
Have you seen Jon Stewart lately? He's been doing a lot of interviews, and there was this one where he's like, yeah, I mean, what happened to wearing a mask was like a sign of a medical professional. So the next time you go to surgery, you're going to tell your surgeon, don't you dare wear a mask. Exactly. Get that liberal shit away from me because I'm an American. I don't need masks.
I don't need you. I'll take those. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
It is selfish bullshit, and it's propaganda.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it comes down from, hissy Fiddler in chief.
Yeah. Lack of leadership.
Exactly.
And I'm living in it in Florida too. Let me tell you that trickle down is no joke here.
I hate to tell you, Mimi, but thank you, Florida.
Yeah.
Florida, the reason why the rest of the country can't have nice things.
I know Florida wins every time. It's so embarrassing.
I would consider moving simply because I would be infuriated.
I know. And, I thought about it in 2016, but then I thought I will stay and fight because of you. You're the one that wrote at the end of Lazarus to stay and fight. And now it's your fault that I'm staying.
But see, and here's the thing, right? We can rag on Florida, easy target. The fact of the matter is there are plenty of Floridians who are wearing masks and looking around and being like, what the hell is the matter with you guys?
Yes, so we're trying.
And this is the other thing. The vast number of people who are trying to do right, the people who do have empathy, the people who do care, we outnumber these guys. But the problem in being in a situation where we're all in it together is it doesn't take many people who say, I'm not in it with you, to fuck it up for everybody else. That's the problem. And then that is tied to the fact that those of us who do look at one another with empathy are resistant to, for instance, taking a baseball bat to the people who are rooting for the rest of us. And this is one of the things, frankly, that we need to get over. We need to get to a place where it is not tolerated. We need to get to a place where, and the starkest example is this. You're going to pull out that racist bullshit. Somebody needs to hit you. There was a time when racists were scared, and the reason they were scared was because they got punched in the mouth, and we stopped punching Nazis in the mouth.
Yeah.
We stopped punching Nazis in the mouth. And we have spent way too long right now trying to reason with people when they are working from a place that defies reason. If you start your argument with, you don't have a right to exist, I'm not going to convince you. Mm-hmm. I have no obligation to convince you. None whatsoever. You look me in the eye and you say, because you're Jewish, you should die. I get to say, guess what? Here's the baseball bat. That does not engage me. I will engage you about policy decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mark is fond of saying, I remember he said, I miss the days when I used to be able to argue with my Republican friends about policy.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
You can't do that anymore.
No.
Now it's about ideology, and it's not even valid ideology. It is a demonstrably invalid ideology, and we know it.
Yeah. Yeah. The moral compass has been completely destroyed.
and we know how that happened, and we know why that happened.
Yeah.
And we also know that Mark Zuckerberg is not doing anything to fix it.
No.
Because Mark Zuckerberg is a chicken shit.
Oh, you mean Mark Zuckerberg, the known pedophile? Who doesn't believe in checking facts?
Yes. I'm talking about Mark Zuckerberg, who was recently seen having sex with dead goats.
That one. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So, the old guard. I'm just kidding.
No, okay. So
to bring it
back around, I think that, look, there's one of the things that I love about the movie, and I think Gina and especially Charlize's performance carries, is the melancholy of it. But to end the movie on this note that Niall brings, this grace note that is, I think, it's not a call to arms, but it is an affirmation of what we can do. It doesn't matter. It literally is. Take away their immortality. The message is the same. And And I'll take that message right now, man, without
Yeah.
hesitation.
Yeah, it's true. No, and she made the choice to get into the fight and to, back up her team, her new family,
Yeah.
basically, is what it is. And I would be amiss if I didn't talk about my unbelievable love for Nikki and Joe. Oh my God. So I loved it as much in the comic, but seeing it on screen, there was just
Hmm.
something very magical for me, especially, the scene in the truck and Joe does his my boyfriend speech.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I think I rewound and rewatched that part because it was just so beautiful and so perfectly executed. And that relationship to me is just that's what I need right now. Like I need to
Yeah.
believe in love and I need to see the happy parts
I,
of films.
I, Marwan killed that, but I got to tell you, one of my favorite moments is the moment when they're in the lab
Okay.
and
Yeah.
Nikki being like, much as I like watching you sleep, and just the warmth between them on
Yes.
that. And I've been thinking about Malta, and which time in Malta?
Yeah. Oh,
That
that
time in
time,
Malta.
Malta.
And, and I just, Luca and Marwan. Look, the casting on the movie is superlative. I cannot imagine how they could have cast better. But the genuine friendship between Luca and Marwan behind the scenes,
Okay.
they were going out and drinking at night, and
Yeah.
Leandro has a photo of the two of them between setups outside of the soundstage at Shepperton, and they're kicking a soccer ball back and forth. They're just, they just loved each other as people. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
were tight,
It
and
translates. It
it
really, it
absolutely
really
does.
translates on film. Like it's, obviously maybe they're not like in love and like this couple, but you could see there's this chemistry and they're friends and there's a love for one another. And oh gosh, it really translates. And so yeah, I just want to take Nikki home with me.
There is a shot. It's one of the last. It's the last, I think, solo shot on Luca, and it's the moment when he's looking at the sociogram and he's just got his head cocked to the side. And it's one of those things that you can only do in film, right? Because it's literally the camera. He is looking past the camera at this thing that the audience isn't seeing. And all it is him looking at it. And it's not like he's doing facial calisthenics or anything.
Right. Yeah.
And I look at that shot and I just adore him. And I can't even tell you, I don't know if he was acting. It looks like acting to me.
Right. Yeah. Lucas did
and
such
it looks
a
like,
spot on.
but that look and that moment and me, I just go like, oh my God, he is so good.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
is so good.
So let's talk a little bit about being on set because I know that you, of course, did Stumptown, but you weren't as involved in the way that you were with this film as being the screenwriter. What was just kind of some memorable moments for you, or what challenging moments even?
Challenging moments. Okay, this is going to get me in trouble. I'll tell you. So I'll tell you a couple of my favorite stories. Challenging was there were a lot of night shoots, and it was roughly, we're talking on the 9th, and I think I got back from England almost a year ago tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had been in England for about 4 or 5 weeks working on the film, and a lot of those were night shoots on location. And that meant that you would, end up going out during the day, and you would have to wait until full dark in England in summer. So there was literally shooting on the shortest night of the year. You had 3.5 hours of darkness in which to shoot. And it gets a little bit of a grind.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're out there and you're tired, and it is late and it is cold, and there are only so many, Americanos you can get from craft services.
Yeah.
And that was exhausting. I will tell you the best day I had.
Yes.
And this is going to piss people off if they ever hear this, and they won't. So, Mark Evans is this wonderful, wonderful man who was the producer on the movie. He was the guy on the ground. And when I arrived, there had been, so the long and the short of it is this. I got fired from the project in January of 2019. They brought in another writer for about 6 to 8 weeks. They fired that writer. They brought in another writer. And at that point, Gina was re-engaging me. And then I ended up, by the time I was back out there, I was rehired on the production. Mm-hmm. But in that interim of like 2.5, 3 months, there had been different scenes and variations on the script. And so when I arrived, the draft was this Frankenstein thing that was some of my original stuff and some of the stuff Gina had done and some of the stuff the last writer had done. And then the stuff that I had been doing throughout May and into June before I got there. And we ended up on this day, and it was super hot. And it's the sequence when they are filming. It's the sequence outside of Andy's mine. Mm-hmm. Right? And it was the arrival at the mine, and then it's the scene with Andy and Niall outside of the mine. Mm-hmm. And those were shot at a quarry in or near, I want to say, Sussex. Okay. So it's about an hour and a half outside of London. And it is already scorching hot as we're headed out there. And we all know it's going to be all day because we're going to have to set everything up to then shoot dusk as dawn. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm staying at this hotel, and they have a driver. You know, the driver was assigned to me, and I forget his name. He was lovely. It was this great guy. And these guys are interesting anyway, like the set drivers. There's a whole discussion to be had about these guys. But this guy was terrific, and we're driving down, and we're talking, because I like talking to these guys, and, you know, I'm not going to be able to write in the car because I'll throw up everywhere. And he tells me that, oh, yeah, you know, his parents moved down here, and this and that. And I knew going out that day that Mark and I were going to spend the day in a trailer trying to compile everything into one collective draft. Mm. And I already wasn't looking forward to that, because it's going to be like, I'm going to be in a goddamn trailer all day doing that. I don't want to. But I said to him, wait a minute, you're from around? He says, oh, yeah, you know any good pubs? And he says, I do. Yeah, there's a great old pub I can think of. And I say, okay. So we get to the location, and we are in the middle of nowhere because it's a fucking quarry.
Right.
And base camp, where they put the trailers, is literally a mile from where they're shooting. Okay. Right? Because you have to go up this hill and these little roads to the quarry. Mm-hmm. It's an old quarry. And I get there, and nobody's around, and one of the assistants says, oh, Mark's over there. And I go, okay. And I go to Mark's trailer, and I knock on the door, and I open the door, and he's sitting there, and it's not glamorous. Understand, these are not the movie star trailers. These are not Airstream trailers. These are absolutely no frills, like there is a bathroom and 2 tables trailers, right? There's nothing sexy about this. Right, this is not... I know what people think of when they go, oh, you're in the... No. This trailer... I mean, Charlize may have had a glorious trailer.
Right. This was not Charlize's trailer.
Yeah. Kiki might have, I don't know.
This is more like middle school trailer.
Yeah, this is exactly. The example is, this is the kind of trailer that they bring to the elementary school when they've run out of classroom space. Right. And so Mark's sitting there, and the thing about Mark is he's got so much energy. And he says, Rucka! And I say, Mark, let's go to a pub. And he goes, can we do that? And I say, do we have to be here today to do this? Is there a reason you have to be here in this trailer to do this work? And he goes, let's go to a pub. So we go and we find the driver, and I say to him, and I think his name was Steve, and I say, Steve, can you take us to that pub? And he says, yeah. So we get in the car and we drive, and it takes about 20 minutes. And about 15 minutes into the drive, Evans is looking at me like, this is not go. I thought it was nearby. And, it's like it is nearby, but these are little narrow roads.
Right.
The driver had to orient. And we finally get to this place, and it's this beautiful old pub up on top of this hill.
Wow.
In Sussex on the hottest day of the year so far, underneath these trees, at these benches. And this is an old pub. Like, they closed at like 2 and didn't open again until 5. And we got there at like 1:30.
Mm-hmm.
So we got there, we get lunch, we get a pint, and we sit out there and we work until like 5:36. And about halfway into this, Mark's like, we're going to get in so much trouble for doing this. This is my favorite day on this set right now.
Love it.
Literally, lo and behold, by about the time 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock rolls around, he's starting to get calls from his assistant being like, they want to know where you are.
Right. We're working offset.
Yeah. And we did. We got it all compiled, and then we drove back to location, and we were there when they did the actual shooting and everything. But that was and will probably be, to the end of my days, one of my most favorite film experiences, which is the part of making the movie where we get to go do this now.
Yeah.
And it was a treat. I loved it.
I love that. Yeah. And it's so great because you needed some creativity. Like, a trailer just doesn't do it. So that made a lot of sense. So how much fun, though? Because I often hear that when people are filming in different places, you don't get to explore in the way that you would like to. So it's nice that you kind of were able to take like a mini break.
Yeah.
a one day break. So,
but it really was. And I do it was a present.
Yeah.
I have photos from time on set, and there's a shot. The house that was used for Merrick's apartment is called the Jura House, and it's apparently owned by some Russian oligarch, and it's a very shishi, fancy, 800 architectural awards house.
Yeah.
And I have a photo of Evans and me. I think Leo took it. And we're literally sitting on the floor in the basement, which is where all the monitors were set up as they're filming upstairs. Backs to the wall, each of us with our laptops on our knees, each of us using these rifle bags that have been doubled and tripled over as pillows. And that's the experience on the Old Guard. It's literally sitting there doing this. And yeah. So, yeah, it is. It is a and you know this, you made a movie. It's a remarkable amount of hard work. You come out of the experience going, and I've said this before, once you are involved in the making of a movie, you can never walk away going, God, how did they manage to make such a bad movie? The question is always, how did they manage to make a movie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The mere act of forcing this kind of bizarre storytelling into creation it's staggering. It defies any realm of logic. The precision required, the commitment required, the attention required to create something that's going to exist on somebody's eyeballs for a second or 2 or 3, shot by shot, it's insane.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. And there's so many moving parts, and you are such a huge part of this one. And so I'm so excited to see how well it came together. And from what you could see, because you were saying, everybody was close on set, they were playing soccer and all these things. And it's like, you can see that it's a film that has, cohesion. Like, it's very well put together. Like, you could feel that everything was in its place. Like, I could see you got along with Gina. I could see that, you could see each part was where it needed to be, because seeing sets that fall apart, and it isn't a question of how movies fall apart and they don't, go from one process to another. There's no, synergy between the people working, but it really, really did come together. And I'm super, super excited for you and excited for the sequel. My only thing, potential. Oh, I think that viewers are going to want more. Like I said, it's a film that we do need right now, and I think it's a refreshing type of thing where we can kind of just take a moment away and be lost in a film. I think that's a gift, because I find that doesn't happen as often as I'd like it to these days. But yeah, the casting, everything was beautiful, and I'm so happy for you as a writer, but also as a filmmaker now. My only disappointment is I was not around to, especially since there could be a sequel, is to at least audition for Quinn, because I know there's some awesome sword work that could be coming in the future. And I'm so but I'm super excited because Veronica, the little we did get to see of her did a fabulous job. But I was like, man, I would have liked to throw my hat in for that one.
Gotta talk to your agent.
I know.
I didn't have anything to do with casting.
I know. No, but it is super exciting to see kind of that how it all comes together, especially reading it, right? Because of course, like I said, I've read the rest of the comic. I know the new one just dropped.
Yeah, issue 5 will be out next week.
That's very exciting. So listeners, go ahead and grab that. Get the whole thing though, so you could see it from beginning to end, because it does kind of complement seeing the movie. It complements it. You get that backstory. You kind of get the feeling for the characters in a different way. And like you said, they're different mediums, but both really amazing stories and a lot of fun to be a part of. So, and to experience. So super exciting. So hopefully we'll talk again next week. I know you have been going crazy with all these interviews, but everybody, go and watch The Old Guard right now, because it is available. You can turn on your Netflix and you don't have to wait. It's right there. Right there for you.
You press The Old Guard. In fact, you won't even have to search for it.
No, it's going to be number one. It's going to shove it. Yeah, it'll be recommended for you. And I also, as a filmmaker, I know that you guys don't need as big of a push because it's Netflix and all, but, give it a little rating. Go on to IMDb and give it some love, because why not? All right, Craig, I don't want to take up much more of your time. I think you need to unwind and enjoy this. Congratulations on your film, and we're super excited for it.
Thank you, Mimi.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to Culture Chat, and hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please subscribe and rate my podcast. Feel free to leave me suggestions or send an email to mimi@culturechatpodcast.com, or follow me on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook.